All right. I'm blown away. I have one of the most incredible talents in the sport of surfing, though in alternative form, but nonetheless surfing. I have Jay Reale from Ocean City, Maryland, who literally number one in so many ways, and we'll find out all about it. Jay, I'm a pleasure to meet you.
Well, thank you. That's some high praise, Hunter. Thank you.
We're both commentators.
That's right.
So we can talk about just about anything.
I don't think they have enough room on the digital chip to record everything we could say.
They'd be hours.
That's right.
So I always like to start off my interview with, how old were you when you first surfed?
Yeah, good question. So my family, actually, we lived inland. We lived in the suburbs of Washington, D.C., and we would just go to the beach for 1 week every summer, and that was it. And like most kids that go on a beach vacation, I would play around in the ocean, but it was really when we moved to the beach when I was 16 that I just completely immersed myself in wave riding. I got on a raft first at about 13 years old because we would spend the summers there before we moved there permanently. And I would just ride a raft, surf mat, some people would call it. And I got a pair of swim fins and kind of learned how to go across a wave. And eventually when bodyboards came out, my brother, who was riding one at the time, said, try this, it's way better, way faster.
So you weren't on a surfboard?
I was not on the surfboard. I literally started on a mat riding waves.
So mats to a boogie board.
Yes, exactly. So,
and it was a boogie board then.
It was called a boogie. Yeah, that's right, because they were really the only name in the game at that time.
Right.
And eventually I also started riding surfboards around age 17, 18. And I still ride surfboards quite a bit too. But yeah, it was in my mid-teens. So I got a late start by comparison to a lot of wave riders.
Right.
Yeah.
Did you get bitten by the bug pretty quickly?
Yeah, you know, because I really got into it right before we moved to the beach, I wanted to immerse myself in surf culture. I felt like I had found my calling, wave riding, the beach, the ocean, and I would read surfer and surfing magazines because there was no bodyboard magazine. Cover to cover. I knew every surf star, Sean Thompson, Dane K. Aloha, you know, all those guys, Shane Horan. And they were kind of, you know, who I looked up to, even though I was a bodyboarder, because there were no bodyboard magazines. So, yeah, I knew as soon as I got into that world, I'm in the right place here.
And what year? Let's put a time.
Yeah, so this would have been like 79.
Okay.
And we still lived inland, but we moved to the beach that following year, 1980. I had been given my first bodyboard and wetsuit for Christmas in 1979 in anticipation of moving permanently to the beach. And I just was over the moon. I could not wait to move to the beach so I could go in the water every day. I was absolutely obsessed.
Okay, what street in Ocean City?
Yeah, so I lived on 106th Street, but the place to be at that time was 15th Street, 8th Street, and up at 47th Street, and the inlet. Those four places were kind of the epicenter, where the best sandbars typically were.
Right, 8th Street, there was a surf shop there.
There was a surf shop called Bombers Surf Center, and it was owned by a gentleman named Jack Crosby and his partner Mike Heyman, and they really embraced bodyboarding early on. And so that became my hangout. I would hang out at 8th Street when I wasn't at work for my parents, and Jack took me under his wing. He was the only guy that really started supporting bodyboarding early on, and he was my first sponsor, and I am forever grateful to him for that because he introduced me to industry reps, and that sort of started my slow climb up the world of bodyboarding. Yeah.
Okay, so I'm going to go back to one statement we said, can you think about when the term changed from boogie board to bodyboard?
Yes, it was. This was around the early '80s. Maury, which owned the trademark on the term boogie board, started enforcing their trademark if other companies came out with boards called boogie boards. So they weren't allowed to use that term. Right. And there is some debate over who started the word bodyboard to refer to the same type of board from another brand. But Maury was very vigilant on enforcing those trademarks. So you didn't see boogie boards other than the Maury brand at that time, which was great for me because eventually they became my sponsor through my entire pro career. But yeah, so that was a hotly contested issue, and a lot of people still don't know that. They just call, and we still call them boogie boards. In fact, it's kind of come full circle. We that are hardcore bodyboarders still refer to it as boogie boarding sometimes. It's sort of a term of endearment now, if you will.
Okay.
Yeah.
Outstanding.
It's come back full circle.
Yeah. And when did you begin competing? And also, do you have a story about getting bodyboarding into the ESA competition?
Yeah, so when I moved to Ocean City in 1980, I was so immersed in it that obviously competition was going to be the next logical step. And Jeff and Kathy Phillips, who ran the Delmarva district of the ESA at the time, were early adopters. They could see that this sport was getting ready to explode, and they knew there was a lot of young kids that wanted to do it. And they immediately added what they called a boogie division to the ESA in Maryland. And well, it was Delmarva at that time, and encompassed a couple different states. But so I started competing immediately in the ESA the very first year they had it, and we had a little core group of riders. My friend Mark Thomas, and there were other guys as well. And we would be at every contest, trying to kind of like friendly rivalry battle against each other for bragging rights. And I started doing really well in that. And after a couple years of doing that, competing in the Delmarva ESA, I started to kind of put two and two together and go, well, every other division in the ESA gets to compete in Cape Hatteras at the Easterns, except bodyboarding. Now, we pay the same dues everybody else does. There's a kneeboard division. That's even more niche than bodyboarding. At that time, it was becoming kind of more bodyboarders, less kneeboarders. So I'm like, if the kneeboarders have a division, we should as well. And Jeff and Kathy went to bat with Dr. Colin Couture, who ran the ESA at the time. And we got bodyboarding added to the Easterns for 1982. So just 2 years in, I had that shot to become East Coast champion.
Wow.
Yeah, it's amazing.
And nobody had an idea of the grandiose effect of increasing the membership of the ESA.
Well, that would be the subtext of this whole thing. Obviously, Kathy and Jeff, all directors want to increase the participation in their events. And of course, the ESA wants more members. So they were very astute to recognize that bodyboarding as a sport at that point was exploding. This is 1980, 81. And whether they were fans of our sport or not, they recognized, hey, this is a need that we can meet. So let's suck it up and add a bodyboard division. Peter Pan up in New England was another guy, early adopter of bodyboarding. And other districts quickly jumped on board in 1981 and added bodyboarding divisions.
When did WSA do it?
The WSA would have probably been a few years later. But eventually they did. In fact, I was on the ESA All-Star team, and we would travel to the West Coast and compete against the WSA All-Stars, and we had a bodyboarding division. Kelly Slater, as a matter of fact, this is a little sidebar here and a humble brag that I'll throw out there. The first year the Easterns had a bodyboard division, 1982, Kelly and Sean competed in the bodyboarding division. Now, Kelly was 10 years old. Yep. Sean would have been 12. And they made the final. And their whole game was to stand up on a bodyboard. So, as the story goes, Kelly's plan was to go out in the final and just stand up. And we knew that the surfers were judging, and they would love that. And I could stand up on my bodyboard. That was part of my repertoire. But I also did drop knee and prone and headstands. I did all kinds of wacky stuff. But Kathy and Jeff campaigned to say, hey, if you're doing the bodyboard division, you have to lay down on the board. much like the kneeboard requirement was you had to ride on your knees. So that immediately wiped out Kelly Slater's whole game.
So was
which
that
helped
like
me.
was that a last minute thing?
I think it was last minute because that wasn't announced in advance. And literally right before my heat, I was sitting on the beach putting my swim fins on, and Tom Dugan, not Tom Dugan, excuse me. Anyway, the gentleman that was the director of the event that year came down and said, hey, listen, just before you guys paddle out for this final, I just want you to know, laying down only. No knee riding, no stand up. And that blew away 75% of my repertoire, but it blew away 100% of Kelly's repertoire. So I ended up going out and got first, and Kelly got second. So I have that claim to fame in my back pocket that I beat Kelly Slater in a wave riding competition.
He was 10 and you were?
He couldn't stand. He had to lay down.
He was 10 years old and you were?
He was 10 and I was 18.
Oh, you mean old guy.
I know. And he had no swim fins. So I had tons of advantages over him. But nobody needs to know that part of the story. We just need to know that I beat Kelly in a wave riding.
That's it. So when did it kick into gear in Hawaii, which would have, in your world, would have been like, holy crap, let's do this in Hawaii?
Well, yeah, so this all happened in a very short amount of time. Maury Bodyboards was experiencing such exponential growth in all of their markets around the world that Mary Lee Christensen, the marketing director, said, let's put on an international event at Pipeline, and we'll take the best riders from not just all around the U.S., but all around the world, and we'll put them up in Hawaii, feed them in Hawaii. All they got to do is buy a plane ticket, and we will have a contest at Pipeline. So because I was East Coast champion, I got an invite, and I was blown away because this is 1982. And at that point, I had never even been to California.
Okay, so this is your first trip to Hawaii, your first surf trip.
Oh, yeah, well, pretty much. So I had never even surfed over a reef before, so I was terrified.
Yeah.
So anyway, I flew there on Christmas Day, 1982. The event had like a 5-day window, and they had to have a trials event. And so there were 2 days of competition in a 5-day window. And you know, Pipeline's pretty fickle. You could get 5 days where it just never breaks.
Onshore and crappy.
But fortunately, long story short, we arrived there and it was just giant the first day we were there. So me and a lot of the international riders just sat on the beach and watched. Like Marvin Foster was out there, Brian Bulkley, a lot of the heavy Pipeline surfers, and a couple of the local Hawaiian bodyboarders were surfing it like it was a 2-foot beach break. And we were just looking at it like we're gonna die. We're dead. We're gonna die.
Right. So from a perspective, did the Hawaiian HSA have a bodyboard division?
HSA did.
And in relationship to ESA, do you know when they implemented it in Hawaii?
I believe HSA was early 80s. I couldn't tell you exactly
so probably
when.
Just a touch before you guys.
Yes, but that event at Pipeline, Hawaii fielded their competitors through a trials event that was held partially at Pipeline and ironically partially at Makaha, because they couldn't get really good conditions at Pipe for the trials. So Hawaiian riders had to qualify just before the main event. And you know, they dominated the event by far. In fact, the entire final was all Hawaiian.
The juice factor was comfortable for them. And you guys are all going, holy
oh my
crap.
gosh, I can't even,
how much power,
Yeah, I paddled out. I'd never seen waves that big in my life, and I'm in a heat. And I have video still of my first heat, like my first wave ever at Pipeline. I actually got a little in and out barrel, but it was, to me, just getting to the beach unscathed was a 100% win for me. I lost in my first heat. I didn't even care. I was actually pleased that I didn't have to paddle back out again because it was terrifying. And I swore I would never ride second reef Pipeline, and I ate those words several years later when I would spend the winters on the North Shore and
but once you became comfortable, it's
yes, it's like anything. You spend enough time.
You fed into your veins the juice.
Yes, and you know, eventually, you know, you learn how to navigate those type of conditions, like anyone. So
So the
amazing.
progression of the sport is just amazing. that from your perspective, it's so, I mean, the energy, like I can feel it coming from you of how this whole thing evolved.
Yes.
And you are right in the freaking heart of it.
Well, a lot of people call that the golden era of the sport. We're talking early 80s through about the early 90s was a period of such huge growth in bodyboarding. Obviously, not just the competition side of it, but the magazines. You know, Bob McNona and PT and Bill Sharp started Bodyboarding Magazine. In 1985, the first issues came out. That gave us a platform, you know, to expose it to more people. There's videographers putting out videos, just like surfing. So we had a lot of parallels, and we had a U.S. tour that had a bodyboarding division. So it was really, to me, even now, that was the best time to be a professional bodyboarder, because the growth was exponential, and now it's so much more difficult for young riders to become professional in this sport in the United States. And at that time, there were a lot of us getting paid to do it and living the dream, really.
Right.
So I'm super blessed and fortunate that I was around at that time. And I'm still around now.
There you
still
go.
doing it.
Well,
Yeah.
just in my head, it popped in. You are the bodyboard version of Robbie Nash in windsurfing. Absolutely.
Thank you.
I mean,
Thank
because
you.
Robbie Nash is, the two of you are living the exact same story
Yes.
in a very similar timeline.
Yeah. And he's still doing it, you know.
Yeah.
He's over there on Maui doing his thing still.
Yeah.
And I'm 61 years old. He's got to be early 60s.
Do you know him?
I don't know him. I know of him, of course,
of
and
course.
see him in social media quite a bit. And I'm like, that's great. These sports, wave riding sports, keep you young if you keep doing them long enough. The ocean is like a fountain of youth, really, for all of us that have devoted our lives to, you know, riding waves, being in the ocean, being involved in this sport. The energy is incredible. And I just feel like, you know, I get so excited just talking about it. I just can't get enough. Being out of the water with a neck injury this is the longest I've ever been out of the water in my life.
Is
and
this
it's
the
killing me.
the worst injury?
This is the worst injury I've ever had.
And how many years in?
46 years of riding waves full time. And now, even now when I'm not injured, I'm 300 plus days in the water, because I live in San Clemente where we have very consistent good surf.
Right.
And I'm obsessed. So it's tough. Anyone who does any sport, if you're injured and not able to do your thing that you love, it's tough. And you know, anyone who's been hurt knows that.
Therapy.
And I'm in that
time for therapy.
I'm ready to get on that flow rider over here to my left, even though I have this thing on, but I know better.
Okay, so let me bring it back
Yes.
to Ocean City, Maryland.
Yes.
Tell us about what this means to you to be in the East Coast Surfing Hall of Fame.
East Coast Surfing Hall of Fame it's a collection of wave riders that are so highly regarded, that are so accomplished, that have done so much for East Coast surfing. And being the first bodyboarder, it's, you know, everyone says it's an honor, it certainly is, but more for me, it's a sense of pride, and not just for me, for the sport of bodyboarding and East Coast bodyboarders. The truth of it is, you know, when our sport was coming up in the 80s, you had to have a very thick skin to be a bodyboarder on the East Coast. The firmly entrenched hierarchy out in the lineups of East Coast spots were almost impenetrable, you know, and coming in as a bodyboarder at the time, we were a threat, because let's face it, bodyboarding is very easy to do from the get-go. So a lot of people that had no skills, no knowledge of etiquette, would get in there and mix it up with surfers, and they had no business being there.
Goddamn
That's
speed bump.
right. A million nicknames.
Boogers.
The nicknames do not stop.
Spongers.
Oh, I've heard it all. And, you know, it was the guys like myself that were very dedicated to the sport that we had to really finesse our way into those lineups and put in the time and take the abuse. Sort of like Groms, you know, young surfers working their way into a lineup. You have to just learn to take the abuse and eventually hope that you gain some respect or at least a place in the lineup. It might not be at the pinnacle. You're not going to be at First Peak Sebastian Inlet on a bodyboard, although I have friends that rode, Sebastian back in the days of Jeff Crawford, Matt Keckley, the Slater brothers, and they were sort of like second tier. Maybe they could surf, third peak, second, whatever. They'd work their way in, and they were okay. So yeah, it was a lot of work, and you needed a thick skin. And so to be able to represent East Coasters, East Coast bodyboarders in particular, in the East Coast Surfing Hall of Fame, the level of pride I have for my sport and my fellow East Coast bodyboarders hopefully comes out in this interview, and the fact that I got nominated, I'm getting inducted today. So yeah, that's a big deal. It's a very big deal.
All right. Well, I hate to wrap this up. I think we've gone amazing. We could sit here literally for hours and do this, because this guy is a superstar. Not I want to say superhero. He's like he should have a suit and a cape and all of that. From the East Coast, Ocean City, Maryland, Jay Reale is the real deal.
Real deal, baby. Thank you, Hunter. I really appreciate it.
I've got goosebumps again. That's
Thank you.
2 in a row.
Thank you so much.
I swear to God, that was fucking immense.
Thanks, buddy.
And we could literally.
Oh yeah.
We've got all the same reference points.
Yeah. I'll interview you next time.
Okay.
That would be fun. I'd love to get some of those.
Here's something in 79. Or was it 80? 79, I sailed to Hawaii, and we landed on the Big Island, and we picked up Maury's wife and
Marcia.
kids.
Oh my God.
And took them to Maui.
No
overnight
way.
across the channel.
Oh my God.
And we'd never experienced anything, because the channel, but the worst channel on the islands is that channel.
Heck yeah.
So we're in the lee of the island coming out, and the kids are having something to eat and everything. And all of a sudden, we're in 8 to 10 foot swells like this. The kids are all starting to barf.
Yep.
Marcia wasn't real happy about things.
Oh my God.
And we're up all night.
Yeah,
sailing this thing, and with a following sea and a following wind. I think we were semi wing and wing. I don't know how we did it, but
wow.
And it was with Maury's family.
Yeah.
Not Tom, he wasn't there.
No, yeah, of course. Tom probably figured out an easier way.
No, he wasn't on the island. He was on the mainland or something at this point.
Okay.
But yeah, that's my history. I see Marcia to this day.
Yes.
And we reminisce on that.
Yeah, I run into her now and then. She lives in Orange County.
Yeah.
And she's she's still very fit. And my wife and I did the paddle out for Tom when he passed away a couple years ago. And the waves are cranking that day. And Marcia at the time was, I don't know, 78 maybe?
Yeah.
And she paddled out. We were all so worried, because she's not in the water all the time.
Right.
We just got lucky. There was a lull, and she made it out, and then caught a bomb set in with 2 of us on either side of her guiding her, so she didn't nosedive. But she's so keen and has so much energy still.
Awesome.
They're great people. And, we miss Tom. He is amazing. If you sat here to interview Tom, you'd be here all day.
Oh yeah, no, I got to know Tom in later years.
Yeah.
He would always. I was a friend of Takayama's. On the Takayama team.
Yep.
So that endeared me to Tom.
Oh yeah.
And we always had lots to talk about.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Tom's he was amazing.
Yeah.
Good stuff. Thank you, Hunter.
Wow.
Appreciate it, man. Thanks. Really appreciate that.